that, including the President of France, that President Musharraf show results in terms of stopping people from crossing the line of control, stopping terrorism.
So here we are amused, really. We are amused, and then at the same time wonder as to how a country of that type, of that stature, of that importance can be so easily duped. And we keep on saying that the Indians duped them, now this gentleman has duped them, and how they appear to be simpletons.
President Musharraf, he must stop the incursions across the line of control.
History, though exotic and romantic for some and painful for others, is not a structured and cohesive map of events, but a cautious and gradual story. It is a story loaded with warnings for those attempting to outguess the future, for those who believe their country has a providential mandate, for those who regard loyal allies as liabilities, for those who believe that religious arrogance is preferable to simulated humility. The hardest lashes of providence fall in history on those who imagine they can control events with imperial grandeur, gambling on ever so risky calculations. Most often, these calculations are based on heady optimism and a surprising faith in the believer's infallibility. This is invariably matched with contempt for the opponent's sagacity, strength, and resilience. On the playing fields of international politics, such delusions of grandeur can be very expensive for both the puppet and the puppeteer. It was the folly behind such calculations that created Pakistan, whose irresponsible and provocative actions on the world stage today constitute the most grievous failure of Britain's unravelling of its Indian empire. It is hard to believe that the British bureaucrats who engineered the birth of Pakistan as a firewall against the Soviet Union could have ever imagined the mess they would be creating. It is equally hard to believe that Pakistan's founder, the urbane and sophisticated M.A. Jinnah, would have approved of his child's gloomy fundamentalist caste, its support for Islamic zealots in Afghanistan and Kashmir, its oligarchic rule by generals and feudal landlords. And yet, all these things were byproducts of Pakistan's violent birth and synthetic nationhood. Pakistan is less a country than a jumble of discordant peoples and places. It is the archetypal imagined community, an offspring of the precipitate partition of India. After half a century, it still has a provisional, almost unfinished quality. Its frontiers are porous, its polyglot population exceptionally diverse, its natural resources scarce and restricted to river waters, natural gas, and an impoverished population. Its chief claim to unity is Islam, on which its rulers have relied inordinately. The military is on a pedestal in Pakistan and has been made into an institution of unquestioned reverence. This rather tacky regimental band belongs to the once famous cavalry regiment called Probyn's Horse. The reverence acquired by the military has contributed to 4 wars and a nuclear confrontation with India, chiefly arising from its unresolved xenophobia about its rights over the region of Kashmir and the caesarean birth of Bangladesh in 1971, albeit midwifed by India. Here you see the Pakistan Army commander of what was then East Pakistan, General Niazi, surrendering to the Indians. Despite the virtual knockout blow delivered to the Pakistani military in 1971 by the Indians, its hold over the reins of power survived one way or the other because of the weakness of civilian institutions. Its successive rulers, braided or civilian, have governed under 7 different constitutions, and not one has completed his or her term of office or managed an orderly transfer of power. The Cold Warriors of the West offered a paean to this successive leadership in the form of the dual role of both the torchbearer of the Muslim world and the defender of the faith against the encroachment of communism. With covert US support, Pakistan bet heavily on evicting the Soviets from Afghanistan in the 1980s by arming an international Islamic brigade to do the job. The CIA ran this covert war, and billions of dollars were pumped into it via Pakistan. Paeans were heaped upon the Mujahideen for their holy war or jihad against the Soviet infidels. As the Soviets began to pull out from Afghanistan after a bloody 10-year war, Pakistan began the dual policy of using these Islamic warriors to engineer an insurgency in Kashmir, while simultaneously waging war against the anti-Pakistan factions in Afghanistan. Field laboratories managed by Pakistan's Inter-Services Intelligence, or ISI, trained madrasa students in the art of terrorist warfare techniques and sabotage. Thousands of impressionable and submissive young men enlisted as soldiers of Islam with the sole objective of waging jihad or holy war according to the principles of the Hadith, so as to destroy all infidels. Young warriors of Islam were rotated between these 2 battlegrounds with amazing dexterity, thereby regionalizing the jihad and giving rise to the term cross-border terrorism. However, from these very frontier training camps also arose the Taliban, Osama bin Laden, the Lashkar-e-Toiba, Islamic Jihad, and other Pakistan government-supported radical Islamic terrorist organizations. These organizations had both regional and global aspirations, and their internationalization came about as a consequence of a consensus between Osama bin Laden and the ISI, which integrated them into the matrix of overt Pakistani state policy. Islam was under threat in a wide arc, starting from the Balkans to the Middle East, the Caspian Basin, and ending up in Kashmir. Therefore, these organizations running the training schools for terrorists did not change their militant orientation after the Soviet withdrawal from Afghanistan, because there were newer battlegrounds for these warriors. Pakistan became the fulcrum of this enterprise and came close to acquiring substantial clout in the Islamic world during those heady days of the 1990s. Men such as this group of prisoners from the Taliban formed the vanguard of forces of international Islamic Jihad, created, nurtured and sustained by the Pakistani state.
What is your name
My name is Mohammed Saleh Hayat.
and where do you come from?
We are in Burma, but nationality Pakistan, in Karachi.
And what made you come to Afghanistan to fight with the Taliban?
We have organization. My name is Islami Mahaz. My commander said me go to for fight.
What is your name
My name is Muhammad Islam
and where do you come from?
from Pakistan, Peshawar.
From Peshawar. And why did you join the Taliban?
और तो मैं आगे नहीं आता है।
तालिबान के साथ किस लिए कर रहे हैं?
तालिबान के साथ तो हम इसलिए होता है कि हमारा मकसद, हम बुनियाद परस्त लोग हैं और हमारा ये है कि हम इस्लामी यहाँ पे माज बनाना चाहते हैं और अफगानिस्तान को हम इस्लामी मरकज़ बनाना चाहते हैं और ये हमारा मतलब इस्लाम का मरकज़ है। हम यहाँ इनकी इस्लात इसलिए आए हुए हैं कि हमारा मकसद यही है कि हम इस्लामी लोग हैं और बुनियाद परस्त लोग हैं। हमारा काम है कि जिहाद करना।
You speak English?
Yes.
Oh, could you tell me please what your name is and where you come from?
I come from China. My name is Abdul
What part of China? From Xinjiang province?
from Sinkin.
From Sinkin. And why did you join the Taliban?
I come here for study religion.
For religion.
Yes.
But for what purpose did you join a fighting force?
I studied 2 months, but my teacher said me to go to the fight.
Where are you from?
आप कहाँ से हैं?
कराची।
And why did you join the Taliban?
आप तालिबान में किस लिए आए आप?
तालिबान में किस लिए है? शरीयत के लिए। शरीयत के लिए।
What job did you do in Karachi before you joined the Taliban?
आप कराची में पहले क्या काम करते थे?
कराची में इनमें तंजीम में था।
What is your name
My name is Salahuddin Khalid.
and where do you come from?
I am from Pakistan.
And what is your profession, your job when you're in Pakistan?
And I was commander of Cradle organization.
And why did you join the Taliban?
My organization Harkatul Mujahideen is a fundamentalism organization, and my area is as Taliban area. Therefore, my organization commander said for me, go with your personnel with Taliban.
What is your name
My name is Muhammad Shahid.
and where do you come from?
I came Karachi, in Karachi, national Pakistan.
And why did you join the Taliban?
I want I want Islamic religion Shariat.
And what made you decide to join a fighting force?
नेशनल तर्जुमानी करो।
आपने मतलब लड़ाई क्यों की?
लड़ाई इसलिए की कि हम एक इस्लामी बेस बनाना चाहते हैं और हम खुद बुनियाद परस्त हैं और हम एक तंजीम से ताल्लुक़ रखते हैं। हमारा एक मिशन और एक सोच, सब जितनी तंजीमें होती हैं मुजाहिदीन की सबकी एक सोच होती है और इस्लामी बेस बनाने के लिए हम इधर तालिबान जो बुनियाद परस्त हैं खुद, इनके साथ हम इनकी कुमत के लिए यहाँ हैं।
What evidence do you have of the direct involvement of the Pakistan Army?
ما نظر به اطلاعاتی که در دسترس داریم، ما جنرالای پاکستانی که در افغانستان اسم میشناسیم با اسم، با رتبه، که در محلهای قطعات پاکستانی را میفهمیم که در کجا جا بجاست. اسمای افرادی که در افغانستان از پاکستانیا کشته شده او را ما در دسترس داریم. اسمای صاحب منصبایی که کشته شده او را در دسترس داریم. و از همه که در روشن‌تر جنرال مشرف خودش چند بار اعلان کرده که ما پشت سر طالبان هستیم، ما طالبان را کمک میکنیم و این بر منافع پاکستان است و سبب امنیت ملی پاکستان ضرور است. چیزی که سیاستمدارای پاکستان در گذشته اعلان نمیکردند، مگر مشرف این را بسیار به صراحت اعلان کرده. و در پالوی از این شما میدید ما بیش از 100 نفر اسیر پاکستانی داریم. فعلا اسیر است پیش ما.
Do you have names of Pakistan generals who are actually fighting with the Taliban?
فعلا مسئولیت عمومی قطعات پاکستانی و میتونیم بگیم مسئولیت عمومی جنگ در افغانستان جنرال قمرالزمان از پاکستان به عهده دارد.
Does Pakistan have a wider aim here than just ultimately controlling Afghanistan?
پاکستان میخواهد که خود محور کشورهای اسلامی در منطقه بسازد و خلایی که در آسیای میانه به وجود آمده یکی از استراتژی پاکستانی است که این خلا را باید پاکستانی ها پر کنند. به او اساس افغانستان قدم اول است برشان و بدون شک به تعقیب افغانستان مسئله آسیای میانه پیشان مطرح است و از این سبب است که در آیسای مدرسهای خاصی در داخل پاکستان ترتیب کرده، مثل مدرسه حقانی که قسمت عمده مصارفش خود آیسای پاکستان میته که تعداد زیاد طلبی دینی از آسیای میانه در این مدرسات درس میخوانند که مستقیما آیسای یا را زیر نظر داره و در بین از افراد انتخاب میکنه و تربیه میکنه با آینده آسیای میانه. مثلا امال فعلا جمعین منگانی یا تایر رولداش ازبکستان شما اطلاع بگیرین که بدون هیچ نوع مزاحمت یا پاکستان میرن، از پاکستان میان در داخل پاکستان در پشاور یا از خود خانه ها و مراکزی دارن. به می ترتیب باقی افرادی که در آسیای میانه هستند که دست به همچون فعالیت ها میزنن در پاکستان یا مدارس چیز دارن، مراکزی دارن منتها رسمی اعلان نشده، خصوصی یا در خود پشاور و در سرحدات از خود مرکزا دارن و این خودش نشان میده که پاکستان نه تنها به افغانستان بسنده و بس نمیکنه بلکه این استراتژی پاکستان شامل تمام این کشورهای ساحه آسیای میانه میشه.
Well, if you look at a nation like Pakistan, its relationships with India are not happy. It has a difficult relationship with Iran. Look at the history of the past 40, 50 years between Pakistan and Afghanistan. Tough neighborhood to live in. And very little room to maneuver, difficult surroundings. And hoping that you can properly secure or have dominant influence in at least one of your neighborhood, one of the nations in your neighborhood would not surprise me as a PAC national. There would be a relatively broad Pakistani national consensus in favor of that.
Until now, Pakistan is not ready to change its policy. It's very clear. And it's not a question, of influence of ISI or military. I think there is a consensus among the Pakistani political leadership. Benazir Bhutto didn't do better, than Nawaz Sharif, than Musharraf, as far as Afghanistan is concerned. Every Pakistani politician in opposition criticized the government policy towards Afghanistan. But the same politician in charge will do the same policy. It's Benazir Bhutto who decided, to support the Taliban in '94. And now she's against the Taliban. She will be pro-Taliban if she is back in charge. So there is a consensus among the Pakistani political and military leadership about Afghanistan. And this is the problem, But I think that the Afghan policy of Pakistan is still and is more and more becoming dangerous for Pakistan.
So clearly, Pakistan does have a role to play. Pakistan has always had a role to play in Afghanistan. Pakistan has always wanted to control who runs Afghanistan because they're concerned about strategic depth. They are, in their own view, surrounded by enemies. They fought, as you well know, three wars with India. So they're concerned basically to have strategic depth as regards Afghanistan. In the past, they supported Gulbuddin Hekmatyar, who was an Islamist fundamentalist type, who was a Pathan, similar to the Pathans in Pakistan. And he was their man in the 80s and the early 90s. Unfortunately, Hekmatyar was never able to take control of the country.
Since the beginning of this war, Hekmatyar has tried to find several avenues to be a player in Afghanistan. But it seems that the one avenue that he's not really tried to do is to actually become a part of the solution. He has rebuffed efforts to try to bring him in to be a part of the new government of Afghanistan because it seems that he wants all of the power. Since he rebuffed those efforts to make him a part of the solution, he has tried to generate followers to carry out whatever his version of a war is. He has tried to ally himself with Taliban and Al-Qaeda, and he has tried to call for another jihad under his name to try to fight both the coalition and the U.S. forces and the current government of Afghanistan. He operates in the border region. We hear many reports of him transiting in and out of the Konar province and then back down into Pakistan.
The US-led Afghan campaign has fundamentally altered the geostrategic power equations in Central Asia, which has become the new focus of US foreign policy. Despite Michael Moore's allegations of the link between Bush and bin Laden families in his film Fahrenheit 9/11, the US Army has been zealously pursuing the remnants of the Al-Qaeda in Afghanistan. These elements keep on infiltrating across the border from Pakistan to mount small terror attacks around Kabul to try and weaken the writ of the Karzai government. However, the main force of terrorists, numbering tens of thousands, has been temporarily shackled by President Musharraf, waiting for the presently improbable return to better days. The trouble is that the US Army cannot cross over into Pakistan in hot pursuit of Al-Qaeda. So it has to be content with mopping up the lower-level guerrilla terrorists while the big fish remain safe in their havens in Pakistan. The Pakistanis project helplessness in dealing with these cross-border terrorists on the plea that the terrorists have taken shelter in the so-called tribal areas bordering Afghanistan, where the writ of the Pakistani government does not run and it is difficult for their troops to enter. Operations such as the one being shown here near the Pakistani border do put a lot of pressure on the Taliban fifth column operating inside Afghanistan. However, what is doubtful is whether the cost of mounting special operations is commensurate to the return derived. The question remains on the quality of terrorist assets seized and whether the terrorists' morale has been shattered or not. The captured terrorists from such operations are invariably flown to the US base at Bagram for interrogation. Identified hardcore terrorists from among them get shipped out further afield to the high-power detention facility in Guantanamo, Cuba.
Well, it's unclear exactly who's helping them. There have been some press reports over the last year and a half that a Pakistani nuclear scientist had paid visits, perhaps even to Osama bin Laden himself. But it seems that they, according to reports, were mainly talking about nuclear weapons or nuclear issues in general. They said they weren't really giving any specific information about nuclear weapons. But in those reports, there was no indication that they helped Al-Qaeda construct or gave them some kind of roadmap to construct a dirty bomb. But my view is that the skill level required to actually build a dirty bomb is pretty minimal. You have to build a very crude device, just having some explosive materials. We know that Al-Qaeda knows how to work with explosives. You take explosives, combine that with some radioactive materials, and ignite it. It's a very crude method of dispersal, but it's a method that would be available to many types of terrorist groups.
While the US presence in Afghanistan is geared to both rounding up remnants of the Taliban as well as to show the flag, other special operations from the massive Bagram Air Base, 47 kilometers north of Kabul, pursue airborne surveillance to locate possible radioactive and fissile material stashed away in the countryside by Al-Qaeda. The legendary Hercules C-130s have covered vast tracts of the Afghan countryside, sector by sector, in pursuit of this activity. Here you see a C-130 taking off to conduct optical, infrared, infrasound, active and passive remote sensing and air debris sampling operations. This is complemented by smaller teams of AH-64 Apache helicopters. The C-130 has got a direct video link to the AH-64 Apaches. Once the C-130 picks up any signals worth a closer look, it communicates this directly to the Apaches, which then go in for closer surveillance of subsectors of the area covered by the C-130.
I think where it was, the threat I think was very great, that if Al-Qaeda had stayed in Afghanistan, had help from Pakistani scientists, they worked with the cover of the Taliban so they can import things, dual use things illegally. There's a great risk that Al-Qaeda would move to developing a nuclear weapon. They'd have to acquire the highly enriched uranium or plutonium overseas, but they would have an indigenous capability. We'd call it a quasi-state program. But what we don't know is how much classified information did Mahmoud and Majid actually, and others, it wasn't just them, how much information did they collectively give Al-Qaeda that could turn out to be useful in building a nuclear weapon later, once they can reestablish themselves or just reestablish themselves someplace else. Al-Qaeda could make a dirty bomb anytime it wants. It could have radioactive material. I mean, it was so plentiful and so easy to obtain. And these scientists may or may not have discussed that. My understanding is from the reporting that they did discuss that with bin Laden.
Interestingly, there was another area of consensus among the power sharers in the Pakistani polity. This was the instrument of nuclear proliferation to all those nations that were inimically opposed to the US. Prominent among these was North Korea, and leading the thrust of this exchange was Dr. A.Q. Khan, the father of the Pakistani bomb.
The fact that there were North Koreans at the Pakistani test site came from reports from embassies in Islamabad, a European embassy. And so, you know, is it true or not? I mean, I don't know, but it came out of an embassy from Pakistan, and it was a report back to its capital, and so it was believed by the government people.
Kim Sin-ai, wife of the economics counselor at the North Korean embassy in Islamabad, Kang Ta-yun, was murdered on the 9th of June 1998, just days after the Pakistani nuclear test, as reported in the Sunday Telegraph in its issue dated November the 1st, 1998, in a story filed by Julian West. Kim was murdered because she was suspected of providing details of the North Korean Pakistani barter to British intelligence.
So, do you have the film?
Yeah, here it is.
The arrangements are almost complete. I'll be in touch.
Okay.
Bye.
Bye.
Kim and her husband Kang both worked closely with leading figures of the Pakistani nuclear establishment. Though under diplomatic cover, Kang actually worked for Changwang Sinyong Corporation that manages North Korea's nuclear infrastructure.
Sit, Mr. Kang.
Thank you, Dr. Khan.
So, how are things with you?
Very well. Thank you.
Unfortunately, I have some very disturbing news for you.
What news, Dr. Khan?
Please, see these photographs.